Tonight I want to talk about a couple of people that I've met through the years and how they may relate to you. I'm not going to try to talk you into believing what I'm saying tonight. To be real honest with you, if I could talk you into something, somebody a lot better than me could talk you out of it. Right? I have been speaking with teenagers for 30 years, 9 months, and 10 days. 7 days. Longer than you've been alive by some time. And I've spoken with millions of people your age around the world. And usually when I speak, just to be real transparent with you, there's a lot of people. This doesn't happen very often for me. But I like this because I can actually get to kind of interact with you a little bit. But when Matt told me that he was having this tonight and he asked me if I could come, I was like, I just knew in my heart I was supposed to be here. And again, I'm not the greatest speaker you're ever going to hear. There's plenty of other great speakers that do what they do. But what I bring to the table for you tonight is a discussion and an opportunity for you to make some decisions about your life. Because one of the things that I've learned in over 3 decades of doing what I do is I never have talked with you all, with students, as kids. You wouldn't listen, you'd get bored. Heck, for that matter, I'd get bored. I've spoken at almost 3,700 events now, 3,700. You don't do that unless God's called you to do it and you have something to say, right? Now, here's what's a little different about us. We don't ever charge anybody anything to come. We just freely come, and that's why when I stand on stages around the world, I can say to the students, I'm not here because I got money. I'm here because I really care about you. And they go, well, how can you care about me? You don't know me. And my response is always the same. I care about you for one reason. You're breathing. Job 33 verse 4 says this, the Spirit of God made you, and the breath of the Almighty gave you life. The Spirit of God made you. Now, God's never made a mistake, ever. He's not going to start with you, right? Your name begins as Braden. When God created Braden, he did not go, oops, Jesus, you won't believe what I just did. No, he created Braden and went, wow, Jesus. Braden's in the earth now. You see, ladies and gentlemen, if my hand is a mirror, here's the question I always ask students, do you see what God sees? And sadly, most students don't, because they buy the lie. They buy this lie that they've got to fit in, they've got to conform, they've always got to try to be like everybody else. I have met tens of thousands of teenagers who said to me, well, I'm trying to be like this group, or I'm trying to be like this group. And then they get to be like this group, then they don't want to be in this group, because this group doesn't represent what they want to be like. And here's my question to you tonight is, what's wrong with just being you? Because you are the only you that has ever existed. You're the only one like you that'll ever be on this planet. Your DNA separates you from billions of people around the planet. Do you know that tonight there are 1.3 billion teenagers alive on the earth tonight? 1.3 billion. You represent a significant amount of the population. Would you believe that over $1 trillion was spent last year on advertising dollars trying to influence what you buy? Let's make it personal. On your phone, on average, how many hours do you spend a day just scrolling? 7. Give me a number. 5. 4. 3. 6. Here's latest numbers that we've got. The latest numbers tell us that on average, every day, teenagers spend 9 hours a day scrolling. 60 hours 60 minutes in an hour? 9 times 6 is what? 540 hours a day. Minutes, rather, a day. 540. Let's say you do that 5 days a week. That's 2,500 hours a week. Let's say you do it 50 weeks out of the year. That's over 100,000 hours of teenagers just scrolling. What are you looking for? Let's make it personal. I mean, I can hit a few buttons right here, and in a few seconds, I have a pretty big audience watching what I say live. But I can also, in a few minutes, I can hit whatever button I want to. I can look at whatever I want to look at. As much of it as I want to look at. This is yes. Right? So I have a friend he said to me, I have a youth pastor buddy. He said, and we have this technology by which we plug the phones up, and on the big screen, it shows everybody's history for the last 7 days. And the youth pastor said, I need all of you to bring your phones up. One young man brought his phone up. The rest of them said, no, not even maybe. Why? Because they didn't want others to know where they had been hiding. You see, when I talk with young people, I want you to understand that your life matters so much. If you can see our home right now, we're in the middle of a pretty major renovation project on our home. And I mean, we've had construction workers there for almost 2 weeks now. We've got all the furniture out of 2 rooms. I mean, we've had to board our three of our 4 dogs are being boarded. I mean, I haven't even seen my shepherds. I have German shepherds. I haven't even seen them in 2 weeks almost. And it's like mass organized chaos. And I've noticed something, that as these workers have gone down to the foundation of the floor, they've gotten rid of all the junk, all the stuff that they're replacing with new. How many teenagers do I encounter who need to have such an encounter with God that he takes you down to your core? Because you know what I've realized about teenagers? I encounter, well, a lot, and they're hurting. And they're looking for love in all the wrong places. They're trying to figure out, why does this happen? Why did that happen? Why did this person hurt me? Why did my parents hurt me? Why did my best friend do that to me? And we recently did a couple years ago, we did a short film that just blew up, got so many views. I mean, I was astonished. And the short film was this. This young girl, she's a 17-year-old young lady, slept with her best friend's boyfriend, and it got out in the school. And man, I'm telling you, the place went nuts. The school went nuts. They started calling this girl everything you can imagine. And she was hurting because she made a bad choice. But you know what happened that day when she did this? She attempted to end her life. And I watched as we did this short film, and we paid actors a lot of money. We brought in paramedics, and we did it right. And the very first time we showed it publicly and showed how God just got involved, that young lady's life was forever changed, and she grew up, had her own family, had a little girl. I mean, the story's pretty amazing. But what amazes me about when we show that film to people and they watch it is the response they get. I'd give an altar call, an invitation. If your heart is hurting, like that young lady is on the television screen, and you want God to touch your heart, I'm going to invite you to get out of your. And here they would all come, and I would be like, dear Lord. I mean, I'm not talking about 5 or 6. I'm talking about an entire altar full across the church, hundreds of students. And I was like, you know what, God, that wasn't even my plan at all. That wasn't where I was going with this, but that's where he was. My point is this tonight. Some bad things can happen to some good people. You may be sitting here tonight, you might be hurting. You may be here and be on top of the world, everything's great. I was in Northern California, and I was speaking at a school. And I noticed that on the front row there was a young lady, and I would soon find out she was a high school senior. And the entire time that I spoke at this big school, this high school senior sat on the front row and cried. I'm like, what am I saying? I'm looking around the audience, while I'm talking, I'm watching all these others, and no one else is crying, so I'm thinking, God's doing something with this young lady's life. You see, guys, God will use anybody who's willing to be used. He spoke through a donkey once, okay? So if he'll speak through a donkey, he'll speak through you, or he'll speak through me. Well, this young lady, when it was over, I went down to her and I said, sweetheart, can we talk? And the principal sat down beside her and put her arm around this young lady. She says, Dean, this is a very special young lady. I said, I can tell. I said, tell me your story. She says, well, I was born in China. Okay. She said, I was adopted. I said, okay. She said, I was 4 years old, and my dad and I went on a business trip that he was taking, and he took me with him, and we went to this great hotel in this big city in China. And I went in with my dad. We had dinner. We went upstairs. She said, I got ready for bed. I went to sleep. I woke up the next morning, and my dad was not in our room. She said, at 4 years old, she said, I guess he was downstairs eating breakfast. So she said, somehow I made it to the elevator. And I remember where to go down to the ground floor. She said, I went into this big restaurant, people everywhere. She said, I went from table to table to table looking for my dad. But he wasn't there. She said, Mr. Dean, I went outside, and she said, I was on this busy street, this busy city, and I was on the curb right in front of the hotel because I didn't want to go too far. Again, she's 4. She said, and I stood there and I just watched as all of these people kept walking by, and I kept looking up from the face of my dad. She said, I did that for 3 days. He never came back. And then she said, and so someone from the government came and they got me, and she said, I fell into a fire, and she showed me her hand. It had been horribly disfigured because of a burn she had experienced. And then she said, another family adopted me, And she began to tell me this story, and the tears went away, and the smile came, and she said they loved me, and we began to talk about that. They moved to America. They live in Northern Cal. She went to school. But then she says, Dean, but why was I, watch this word, rejected? The most powerful word that I encounter among teenagers today is not suicide. That's the result of. The most powerful word that I encounter among so many teenagers today, irrespective of your last name, irrespective of how much money your family has, irrespective of how great of a student you are, how great looking you are, how great of an athlete you are, whatever it is that makes you you, irrespective of all of that, the single number one thing that I encounter on the road is this word called rejection. It happens to the toughest of the toughest, the baddest of the baddest, the weakest of the weakest. And they stand in lines for literally 30, 45 minutes to tell me their story of why they were rejected. Many of you right now, you don't even realize it. You're nodding your head at me like you're talking to me. It happens every time we do this. Well, on the other side of rejection is a word called accepted. But let me tell you, not only about the young lady in California, let me tell you about the guy you're listening to. If you were here the last time, you might remember that I told you that at 15 I was sexually abused. 17 I failed PE in high school, not because I wasn't athletic. I mean, I taught tennis, I played golf, and I played quarterback on the football team. I could throw the ball at that point 50 yards in the air. Could you do that, Matty R? I doubt it. No, just be honest, you could. There's no way you could at 17. But I could. And I don't know why I could, but I could. But I wouldn't dress out. Why? I wasn't going to put myself in an environment where I could get myself hurt again. So at 18 years old, 19, I have this moment where I'm just very angry. 21, I told you how I was sitting in my office, I was dialing a phone, and I'd been in church my entire life, but yet I didn't know God from Adam. And at 21 years old, I said this prayer, God, if you're real, prove it, but if you're not, I'm through playing this game. Does anyone remember the two words that God spoke to me 2 weeks later?
Call Mom.
Who said that? Come on. The fact that you remember that makes me happy. Yeah. Call Mom. Do you know how many pieces of information go through your brain a minute?
A lot.
Yeah, times infinity. But yet you remember two words from a year ago. Tells me a lot. Call Mom is what I heard. Sitting in my office, dialing a phone, off behind me to my left, I hear someone say, call Mom. I turn around, I see no one, but yet I had just heard someone say, call Mom, and it had a lot of authority in his voice. So I dialed 344-744-333. The phone rings 7 times, 8 rings. My mom answers the phone, and when she said hello, I instantaneously knew something was wrong, because in that moment when I was told to call her, she was attempting suicide. She was dying. I get to their home from the outside in, everything looks fine. It's safe, secure home from the inside out, probably like where you live, but yet my mom was dying. My family had a lot of money, a lot of status, big home, nice cars, whatever, and we were falling apart. My life today, if you knew my story in totality, you would sit there and go, how can you even speak to us right now? But yet, all of my kids are grown. My wife and I have a wonderful home. We got a big pool, a really fast boat. I have a jet airplane. I have all the stuff society says makes you successful. And my world was falling apart as early as 6 weeks ago. 42 days ago. But you see, you never stop doing what God called you to do. If you do, you lose. But if you don't, you win. So the fact that I can come here tonight and spend my time, invest my time with 50 people that I may see again, I may not see again, it's critically important for me to get you to understand how much your life matters, because that, at the end of the day, is maybe the very thing that keeps you going. That day when my mother attempted suicide, I got her to a hospital, and a doctor worked with her for 45 minutes, came out of the ER and said to my dad a sentence I'll never forget. He said, Mr. Sikes, there's no medical reason to tell you this. It's a miracle of God. Your wife is alive. You can go see her. Now, this is exactly what I thought. When I heard that doctor say miracle of God, I was like, crap, you're real. It freaked me out, because I'd always just heard about God, but I didn't know God. All of you have heard about God at some level in your life, but do you know Him? Do you have any revelation at all of how much He loves you? That if you were the only person that had ever lived, He would have still said to Jesus, hey, I need you to do something. There's only one way we're going to get that one person up here with us. You're going to have to go pay a severe price. And Jesus would have said, okay, I'll do it for that one. Well, what I don't talk about a lot is 9 months before my mom lived 30 more years, by the way. 9 months before she died on March 13th, 2020, so 2.5 years ago. 9 months before she died, she said to me on a telephone call, She says, Dean, when you were 4 years old, I emotionally abandoned you. Now, what does a 4-year-old do to be abandoned? But I thought about that young lady who grew up in China. What did she do wrong? Nothing. You see, ladies and gentlemen, there is a good God, but there's also a really bad devil. And if you don't believe that, you will. And let me just make this real clear. Heaven is not full of good people. And conversely, hell is not full of bad people. That's not what gets us into heaven, being good. We can't be good enough. Listen, I spoke at a high school. There was a young man there. He was the quarterback of the football team. He came down to me. He had all these students with him. I mean, a lot of teenagers who say to me, well, I'm a leader. That's great. And I asked them, well, how do you know you're a leader? And they go, I just know. No, that's not good enough for me. You know how you know you're a leader? Look over your shoulder. Is anybody following you? Then you're a leader. How do you make that real personal? What's the Bible say? You'll know people by their fruit. What kind of fruit is your life producing? Are you kind, courteous? Do you include others? Are you a jerk? I mean, fill in the blank. Here's what the Bible says. To whom much is given, much is required. You've been given an opportunity to make an impact on the lives of others. Well, that's another subject. When we have this opportunity to talk with this many kids, I see this young man walks down front. He's talking to me. He's got all of his buddies around him, quarterback of the football team. And I watch him say to his buds, he goes, hey, I'll catch you at lunch. I got to talk to this speaker for a minute. They all just were dismissed. They left. He looks at me and he goes, I need to tell you something. Okay. And I'm getting ready because this is what, it happens every day that I'm on the road. Somebody will come up and say, I need to talk to you. Not long ago, I was in Texas. A young lady walked up to me and she said, last night I was raped at Walmart, behind Walmart. Can you help me? Yeah. I got her some help. I could tell you stories that would make your ears pin beyond recognition. It would freak you out so badly. Of students that I've met in the United States, forget Africa, South Africa, Australia, I know the U.S. This young man, quarterback, tells the team to go. He's down there. It's just he and I, this massive auditorium. We're now looking at each other. He goes, you said to all of us here today, you said that our lives matter. I said, yes. He said, do you believe that? I said, no. I know that. He said, I'm going to trust you. I said, okay. This was 10:15 in the morning, maybe 10:45 at this point. He said, I want to give you something. I said, okay. And he pulled this out of his pocket. This is the very one. You know what that is? 12-gauge shotgun shell. Quarterback of the football team. And he says to me, as he puts it in my hand with tears streaming down his face, he said, today at 3:15, 5 hours from now, 600 minutes, I was going to the 50-yard line where I was going to end my life. And no one knew it. But because you told me that my life matters, I want you to have this. I said, okay. Now, he had everything going for him, supposedly. Quarterback of the team, very popular, had all these young people surrounding him, following him, but yet his life was falling apart. And maybe, just maybe, you and I can relate to that. There's my confirmation. That's good. So when my mom tells me 9 months before she dies, I abandoned you, and then she kind of just shuts me out of her life, but yet I just keep showing up because I know she's getting ready to die, I had a choice to make, and the choice was this: will I forgive people who've hurt me? And that's the question I believe I was supposed to ask you tonight before this thing comes to a close. I meet a lot of young people who've been hurt, and they mask it really well. They didn't hurt me. They're not going to hurt me. Yeah, they did. I was so bullied in high school. Do y'all still have Spirit Week wherever you go to school? Like homecoming week? Is each day a special, something different? Yeah. Okay, Thursday on my homecoming week, when I was a junior in high school, was Dean Sikes Day. Now, I thought it was a compliment until everybody showed up and they had on khaki pants that were cuffed about an inch above their ankle. They all had these button-down starch shirts like I wore every day, and cardigan sweaters like Mr. Rogers. And they all walked in, and I thought it was something cool, but I realized they were making fun of me. And it hurt. I was like, man, I thought y'all were my friends. They said, you make it too easy. Well, today I fly over them in my jet, so it's okay, but just so you know. My point is this: don't ever give up on what God's called you to do and who He's called you to be, because you are the only one that like I said, you're the only one that exists. So let me ask you this: what if today was the last day of this thing called Earth? What if your life ended in the next 30 seconds? Did I tell you all about the young man I met in Louisiana who was wearing the long trench coat? Did I tell you that story?
What was that last time you were?
Yeah. Well, it's, for those of you who haven't heard, let me just the short version of it. I spoke in a big high school, probably 1,500 kids were there, and a young man, when it was over, walked towards me. He had this long trench coat. It was 100 degrees in the gymnasium. Schools you've seen on television, I've spoken at. We've had the school shootings. I've stood on several of those stages where kids have been shot and killed. So I'm watching this young person walk across the stage. It's 100 degrees. He's got this trench coat on. I go, hey, God, you see this? He goes, the Lord said, I got you, Dino. I said, cool. All right. This young man goes, hey. I go, hey. He goes, I liked you. I said, thank God, I like you too. He goes, I liked your assembly. I said, well, thanks. He said, you talked about God? Yes. He said, I don't believe in God. Cool. Aren't you going to try to talk me into believing? Nope. I got to go. I had 45 students waiting to talk. I start to walk towards these 45. This young man grabs my arm. He goes, what would happen if I died right now? I said, are you a Christian? He goes, no. I just told you I don't believe in God. I said, well, you're going straight to hell. He just said, did you tell me to go to hell? I said, no, you asked a question. There's heaven, there's hell. There's no third option. He goes, well, I don't want to go to, I don't want to go to hell. I said, well, it's your choice. That young man makes a decision right there in front of me. He said, I got hurt in church. I said, I understand. And I talked to him about forgiving the people who had hurt him. Well, I lead him to Jesus right there on the spot. And I go, Lord, I need 30 seconds, because if in the event that you're getting ready to come back to this earth in the next 30 seconds, I would hate to miss heaven by 30 seconds with this young kid. There's my question for you tonight. Wouldn't you hate to miss heaven by 30 seconds? Well, I don't believe, but you will. There are no unbelievers in hell tonight, guys. Again, I could care less about talking to you in anything. I'm not here for that reason. I'm here to get you to think. That young man walked away, came back in about 6 or 7 minutes, dragging a guy across the gymnasium floor. He grabs me and goes, Mr. Dean. I go, man, I am working. He goes, this is John. He's my best friend. I go, hey, John. John goes, what happened? I go, I'm introducing my best friend. First kid goes, John's going straight to hell. True story. I led John to Jesus. They walk off together, and I go, wow, that's why we came to this school. I don't know who it is that I came here for tonight. And maybe it's for everybody, maybe it's for nobody, maybe it's just for one. But what I want you to get is this. The young lady in China who lived in LA or Northern Cal, real people, was really hurting. She had been rejected. My life, really rejected. Caused a lot of pain. Did a lot of damage. A young kid in Louisiana. I mean, I could stand here tonight. We could stand here for the next 2 days. I could tell you story after story after story. But let's make it personal. Let's bring it in for a landing with you. The number one issue that I encounter on the road, I told you, is rejection. The number one result of that is suicide. Every day in America, 5,600 teenagers your age attempt suicide. 5,600 every day. And those are different people every day, by the way. In an arena that seats 12,000 people, that arena would fill up every 2.5 days with teenagers who in the previous 60 hours bought the lie. Suicide is built in threes. A person will first think about it. Secondly, they'll talk about it. And third, if they're not stopped, they'll attempt it. I've sat with young people who attempted it. I've sat with parents. I've sat with a mom whose son ended his life. I've sat with young people who've been bullied. And they've told me with tears streaming, what it was like. They said it was like this dark, ominous, evil cloud just came into my mind, and it was kind of just pushing me towards a decision. And they would say, suddenly I was like I was just lost control of even what I was thinking. And they go into this place where it's demonic. It's a real devil. Not trying to scare you at all, just trying to get you alert to the reality that if you're a threat to the enemy, guess what? You're also a target. If you're not a threat, you're not a target. Well, I don't want to be a target. It's not about being, trust me, God is much bigger than that devil. So here's my question I'm going to ask you tonight. Would you do me a favor? Matt, would you play? Would you do me a favor? Just for a few, is this my water?
Yeah.
I've been wondering about that for the last 30 minutes. I've been really thirsty. I'm going to ask each of you here to do a couple things in the next 5 minutes, then I'm through. This will take some guts. I will tell you, I'm not going to point you out. I'm not going to ask you to get out of your seat. None of that. That's not why I'm here. But I am going to ask you to draw a circle around your life. And don't think about anything else except where you are in relationship to the questions I'm going to give you right now. And whether I'm standing in front of 15,000 students in an arena or here and wherever I am, Tennessee, I do it the same way. I invite you to close your eyes, just to be respectful of those around you. In about 36 hours, I'll do this again in South Georgia. There'll be 800 plus students, and I'll ask these same questions and I'll get responses from a big number of them. But there's nothing more important right now than where we are with you. In fact, on Friday when I'm down in that big school, I'll probably talk a little bit about what happened 2 days ago here in Middle Tennessee. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and again, the only answers are yes or no. The only way you can answer yes is to raise your hand. I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not going to point you out. I'm not going to ask you to do anything other than just raise your hand. And nobody's going to be watching. This is just between you and Jesus. First question I'm going to ask you is this. What if today we only had 30 seconds? What if this moment that I've been talking about for the last 30 minutes ended in the next 30 seconds? Here's what you would see happen. First of all, you would hear a trumpet blast they'll hear from South LA to Eastern China and all points in between. Secondly, you'll look to the eastern sky and you will see Jesus on a horse with a host of angels coming in for a pretty significant landing on planet Earth. There's only one reason he's coming. That's to get you. Some of you have a pounding in the center of your chest. That's not me. That's the Spirit of the living God saying, hey, this is an opportunity I'm giving you. Because you see, we don't know what the future holds, but if you're hanging out with God, you do know who holds that future. So I'm going to ask you 3 or 4 questions real fast. Here's my first one. If you're not a Christian, you say to me, Dean, I want to become a Christian. I'm not talking about joining a church. I'm not talking about I'm talking about you just want to have a personal relationship with Jesus. When I say 3, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. Nobody's watching. 1, don't let pride stop you. Here we go. Take a deep breath. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Hands up, please. My. Look, keep them up. Don't be ashamed, my Lord. Okay, you can come down. That was 13 of you right there. Okay, next. You're a Christian. You're going to heaven. But you know that you're not living for God. The word is compromise. You've got some real compromise in your life, and you're ready to put it on an altar and say, God, I give this to you. I repent. I just want my life to change, and I know that I can't do it on my own, but I need you. If there's things in your life you're ready to put down, when I say 3, I want you to raise your hand. 1, ready? 2, 1, 2, 3, go. Oh, my Lord, that's okay. 85%, put them down. Third question here, they get a little more intense, but it's okay. When I said rejection, I wish you could have felt what I felt coming from you. Rejection is a real, real serious thing. And for it to matter, it happens by somebody that we really care about. I was rejected by a mom. Well, how much more serious can it get than that? On the count of 3, if you say, Dean, there's somebody in my life that I know that pain of rejection. You see, what happened to me was I had to make a decision. Would I forgive those who had really hurt me? The person who sexually abused me, would I forgive that person? My mom, would I forgive her? Could I forgive myself for where I had messed up? When I say 3, if you say to me, Dean, there's real rejection in my heart, but I'm asking God tonight to touch that and to heal it. When I hit 3, raise your hand. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Yep. Okay, here's my last question. This is the question that takes the most guts to answer, and it's just that, guts. I told you that suicide is built in 3s. Person will first think about it. Secondly, they'll talk about it. Third, if they're not stopped, they will attempt it. Tonight, if you're thinking about it, you're 1/3 of the way there. If you're talking to somebody about it, you're 2/3. So maybe tonight, God sent me all the way over here just to ask you this one question. If suicide is a real option, when no one looking, no one's, listen, I know you're here, I can come point you out. When I hit 3, I'm going to ask you to just raise your hand. I'm not going to embarrass you, I've already proven that to you. Well, why do I have to raise my hand? Because when you raise your hand, you're acknowledging something. And when you acknowledge it, you take the power away from it. 1, 2, ready, here we go. 1, 2, 3, hands up, please. Yep. Okay. Everyone look right up here. Hard part's over. By the way, 6 people had the guts to raise their hand on that last question sitting in this little group. 6. That's the 6 who had the guts to. There's more. There's always more. So what do we do with that? Great. Glad you asked. Here's how you get born again, become a Christian. I do it the same way wherever I go. I ask everyone in the room, everyone in an arena, everyone in a high school to say this out loud with me. Can you do that? Father, I believe that Jesus is alive, that he was on this earth, that he died, and he went to hell so I wouldn't have to. I believe he raised him from the dead. He's seated at your right hand. And tonight, he's talking to you about me. Jesus, I repent. Forgive me. Come live in my heart. Be my Lord. Be my Savior. From this moment forward, I'm yours. You're mine. Let's just hang out. Let's just do life. In Jesus' name. Amen. I lost most of you at the last 2 sentences of my prayer. Because you're like, how can you talk to God like that? And I'm like, okay, if you talk to God in King James, here's what it's going to sound like. God, wherefore dost thou wantest me to goest? He's going to say, over there, why are you talking so weird? But if you go, hey, God, what's happening? He'll go, I am what's happening. Because his word says, I am that I am. You've got to have a relationship.